Hi, I'm Lily, and at my grandfather's will reading, the room went from quiet tension to chaos. The lawyer slid a check across the table. It said $29 million 0 cents. My parents lunged, ripped it in half, then set it on fire, screaming, "This is what you get for cutting us off!" But I didn't flinch, because what they destroyed wasn't what they thought. And the real will, let's just say Grandpa was smarter than they ever gave him credit for, and he left it with someone they never saw coming. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, because this isn't just another family feud. This is what happens when the forgotten child finally finds her voice. And trust me, you're not ready for what they never saw coming. I hadn't worn heels in years, but that morning I chose the sharpest pair I owned. Not for fashion, for the sound. The click against the marble floor of the law office echoed like armor. I wasn't just walking, I was marching into enemy territory. But no one looked up. Not my mother, Susan, who glanced through me like I was just another assistant pouring coffee. Not my father, Robert, who gave the barest nod out of habit, not recognition. And certainly not my sister, Emma, reclining like she was backstage at a fashion show, sunglasses pushed to her hairline, waiting to collect her prize. Mr. Sheridan, our family's lawyer for decades, cleared his throat. "We're here today to fulfill the final wishes of Edwin Marin," he began, tone neutral, his gaze scanning the room. "As per his request, all immediate family members are present." I sat last, quietly, as always. The smell of lemon polish and old leather choked the air. Across the table, Mom twisted her pearl necklace like a nervous tick. Dad folded his arms, stone-faced. Emma tapped her French tips against the wood, like she already knew she'd won. But Grandpa hadn't played by their rules, and they were about to find that out the hard way. Let's rewind just for a second, because what happened next wasn't just shocking, it was a masterclass in greed disguised as grief. Mr. Sheridan adjusted his glasses, unfolded a sheet of thick paper, and began with practiced calm. "Your father made specific allocations." Emma Marin sat up straighter, already smirking. "To his daughter Emma," Sheridan continued, "he leaves the cabin in Jackson Hole and the 1959 Gibson guitar." Emma blinked. "I'm sorry, that's it?" Sheridan didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the paper. "To Robert and Susan Marin, his son and daughter-in-law, he leaves the heirloom grandfather clock, his vinyl collection, and a $10,000 0 cents charitable gift made in their name." You could practically hear the blood drain from my mother's face. "Excuse me?" she choked, like she'd swallowed a lemon. My father scoffed, pushing his chair back with a hard scrape. "This is a joke." And then Mr. Sheridan turned to me. "To Lily Marin, he leaves his entire financial estate, totaling $29,246,000 0 cents. Silence. Not just any silence, the kind that hits your ears like a slap, the kind that makes even the air feel thick. "What?" my father barked, rising from his seat. Mr. Sheridan, unshaken, held firm. "It was notarized. He made this change himself, in person 3 months ago. It was deliberate." "That can't be right," Mom snapped, her voice sharp and panicked. "She hasn't spoken to us in years." "She left this family." "She abandoned us," my father echoed, the veins in his neck rising. "She doesn't get to show up out of nowhere and collect a fortune like she's some kind of martyr." But Sheridan didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out a thick, wax-sealed envelope from beneath his desk, stamped with Grandpa's old wooden horse emblem. I recognized it immediately. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Inside, a folded check and a handwritten note. "For the one who stayed silent and stayed strong. You were never forgotten. I saw everything." Before I could read it again, my father's hand shot across the table and snatched the check from my lap. "What are you doing?" I asked, voice steady. No response. He inspected the check like it were fake. Mom ripped the note from my hand. "Stayed silent?" she sneered. "You mean ungrateful?" She tore it in half, then again, until the paper fluttered to the floor in scraps. Emma just leaned back and smiled. "Oh, please, you're not the victim, Lily. You always played poor little Lily. Grandpa just pitied you." I opened my mouth, but my father was already pulling a lighter from his coat. "Robert," Sheridan warned, rising. But it was too late. "I'm not letting her buy her way back in," my father growled. He flicked the lighter. The check caught immediately, curling in flames. Ash floated like snow over the polished table. "There," he spat, voice cracking. "Now we're even." I didn't move. Didn't wink. Mom folded her arms smugly. "This is what happens when you betray your family." She didn't even visit when Dad was sick, Emma added. But I just sat there, staring at the thin line of smoke twisting upward, like incense at a funeral, watching the last of my grandfather's love and intention disappear into ash. They thought they'd erased me, but they had no idea what was coming. They thought they'd destroyed everything, tore it in half, set it on fire, like that act alone could erase me. But what they didn't know was, what they burned wasn't real. That check? A decoy. I'd found it tucked in Grandpa's desk drawer a month before he passed. When I asked him about it, he looked at me for a long moment, then said, "They'll try to ruin whatever they can't control. Let them. We'll plan for that too." The real check? Wired directly to a separate trust, untouchable, untraceable. The real documents were already in my coat pocket the day of the will reading, folded inside a plain brown folder Grandpa had given me over coffee 2 months earlier. On the front, in his careful handwriting, just 5 words. Only open when they burn it. So I smiled, not the kind you fake for holiday cards, but the kind that grows slow and sure like a sunrise over cold ground. They wanted me to be the outcast? Let them. I stood, smoothed my coat, and walked out without a word. No farewell, no anger, just the solid sound of my heels on marble echoing in a room that had never welcomed me anyway. Outside, the air bit at my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. I slid into my car, laid the charred envelope on the passenger seat, and opened the folder. At the top, a single handwritten note. Let them think they won. That's where it starts. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just drove to a small brick bank tucked away behind rows of oak trees. The private lot was empty. The mid-morning sun had burned away the fog, and everything looked calm. Too calm, considering what I was about to learn. Mr. Adams the banker was already waiting. Silver-haired and quiet, he greeted me the same way he always had since the first time Grandpa introduced us. "Miss Marin," he nodded, leading me to the elevator. "Everything's been arranged per Mr. Edwin's instructions." He didn't ask questions. I was grateful for that. In the vault, the air turned cool. Mr. Adams slid a steel drawer open and stepped away. "Take your time. I'll be outside." I sat down, fingers shaking, and unlatched the box. Inside, 3 things. A folded check, a flash drive in a velvet pouch, a file of legal documents, tied with a red ribbon. The check made my breath catch, $29,246,000 0 cents. Real this time, real and heavy in my hands, signed in Grandpa's old looping script I used to trace on his birthday cards. The paper felt thick, like it had weight in the world and in my chest. Then I opened the file. Inside were 2 older wills, one from 8 years ago, another from 3. In both, Emma and my parents had been the sole heirs. Grandpa's notes filled the margins in pencil. Susan's idea. Doesn't feel right. Robert pressured again, said Lily wouldn't know what to do with it. And finally, his last will, clean, unambiguous. Everything went to me. My hands trembled. Not from greed, not even from relief, but from validation. Proof I hadn't imagined it. Proof I had always mattered, even if they pretended I didn't. I slipped the flash drive into my laptop when I got back to my car. The screen lit up, and there he was. Grandpa, sitting in his den, surrounded by worn books and soft lamplight. "If you're watching this, I'm gone," he said, eyes soft but sure. "I wish I could see their faces when they realize they didn't win." He chuckled, then grew serious. "I saw what they did to you, when they turned your room into storage while you were still in school, when they froze you out, lied about you being difficult, just because you didn't fall in line." He paused, sighed. "Should have said something sooner, but I thought time might soften them. I was wrong." He leaned closer. "You were the only one who never asked for anything but gave more than anyone. That was never a weakness, Lily, that was a strength." I blinked fast. "This is yours now. Let them rage. Let them scheme. The law's already on your side. And remember, sometimes, silence is the sharpest blade." The screen faded to black. Later that night, back in my tiny rental, I placed the burned envelope on the kitchen table, which they thought had held power. Then I opened the safe in my closet. Inside, I placed the real check, the flash drive, and the legal papers. Everything they'd never get their hands on. After that, I made tea. I sat by the window. The world outside didn't change. But I had, and for the first time in years, I smiled, because they thought they'd buried me. What they didn't realize was I was the seed, and I'd just begun to grow. Sometimes the truth doesn't knock. It waits in silence, buried in paper, tucked in vaults, scrawled in fading handwriting, until someone dares to look. I never expected the truth to arrive in the form of a sealed white envelope stuck to my apartment door, neat and cold like it knew its purpose. No name, no address, just a sharp script and a warning that tasted like secrets. What they burned wasn't the real check. Don't speak, just move wisely. Look in the box array at the security firm. You'll understand everything. I held the paper like it might crumble. But it didn't. It held steady, like Grandpa's hand on my shoulder that winter when I told him I couldn't stay for Christmas. The same steadiness I saw in his eyes when he slipped me that brass key years ago with a single sentence. You'll need this someday. When you're ready to claim yourself. I wasn't ready then, but I was now. The building where the vault was held didn't look like it belonged in a conspiracy. It sat plain, half forgotten, behind a stretch of oak trees and a rusted BBQ joint. I parked, palms sweating. The receptionist didn't blink when I gave her the name, just nodded, and walked me through a hallway lined with quiet. Box 8. A single chair, one cold table, and a click that echoed louder than it should have when she unlocked it and left me alone. 3 things sat inside. A certified cashier's check, $29 million 0 cents. A red waxed envelope in Grandpa's script, only if they burn the first one. And a file thicker than grief. The check was real this time, heavier than guilt, legitimate, final, signed in the looped script I used to trace with my finger on childhood birthday cards. But I didn't hold my breath until I opened the envelope. If you're reading this, they showed you who they are. The money isn't the gift, Lily. It's knowing who to trust when they try to bury you. Keep your counsel, and don't let them make you small again. No tears came, just that sharp press in my chest. I had always felt small, quiet, shrinking in corners while they laughed in rooms I wasn't allowed to enter. Not anymore. That night, just as my tea went cold on the counter, a second envelope appeared, no tape this time, and across the street, in the shadows, a woman stood, watching. The scarf caught my eye first. Blue silk, ivory trim, tiny stitched initials. M. Marjorie Carroll. My mother's sister, my aunt. The scarf she claimed the laundry 3 years ago. I didn't flinch, just walked toward the cafe, fast, calm. I took the back door, doubled around alleys and crossed blocks. When I turned to look again, she was gone. But she had been there. And she wanted me to know it. At home I logged into the old estate email, just to check. One flagged message stared back at me. Subject: do not ignore. They're not after the money. They're after the signature that proves who owns the company. Attached is the legal transfer Grandpa filed 2 weeks before his stroke. I clicked the PDF. My name, Lily Maurice Marine, sat at the bottom, signed, notarized. It wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about control. That night, my phone rang. Hello, I said. A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard since the funeral. Lily, it's Melba, Grandpa's assistant. Gone without a word after the will. Everyone thought she had retired. If you've opened box 8, she said, then listen carefully. They're not just cutting you out. They're erasing you. I froze. They filed a false death certificate, Lily. You're legally dead on paper. You can't inherit. You can't own anything. You can't fight back. My voice cracked. Why? Because if you don't exist, they win. Melba told me to check the Charleston land deed. The original, not the copy they showed the court. Then go to the Charleston Historical Archive, she said. Use your birth name. I left something for you there. And then the line went dead. I typed it in, slowly. Lily Maurice Carroll. The result hit me harder than anything. Status: deceased. Date of death: 2 weeks ago. Cause: pedestrian collision, confirmed via dental records. I sat there, cold, silent. They hadn't just betrayed me, they buried me. The next day, I drove out to a storage facility listed under Carroll & Co. Emergency Holdings, tucked away on a road no GPS should trust. The padlock was rusted, but the key turned. Unit 19B. Inside was dust and silence, but at the center, like he'd placed it for me alone, was a black, fireproof briefcase. On top, taped with yellowing Scotch tape. If they ever burn you, open this. Inside, a manila folder, my original birth certificate, unrevised. Letters, dozens, all addressed to me, most never mailed. Notarized will, dated after the so-called death certificate. And the land deed. In my name? Signed, filed, legal. They'd known I was alive, I scanned everything, photographed it, uploaded it to encrypted drives and cloud backups. Then I called a probate lawyer. I used a burner phone. "This is Lily Marin," I said. "I need help contesting a will and exposing identity fraud." When I stepped out into the light, I was no longer the forgotten granddaughter, no longer the girl who stood quietly while her family took everything. I was the legacy they tried to erase. And I had proof. At that moment, my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Emma's voice shook like the truth in a storm. "If you're alive, I didn't know they filed it. I just signed what they gave me. I didn't know. Please, believe me." I didn't. But I whispered back anyway. "Thanks for the confession, sis." When I stepped out of that dusty warehouse into the blinding sunlight, it felt like leaving a crypt, not just of brick and dust, but of silence, buried truth, and erasure. My arms cradled more than papers, flash drives, and Grandpa's voice etched in cassette tape. They held the weight of proof. Of legacy. Of my name, restored. I didn't drive straight downtown. Instead, I found a booth in a no-name diner near the overpass and ordered nothing but coffee. I needed a moment to breathe, to sit with the truth in my hands, before placing it in a courtroom. When the burner phone buzzed, it was brief. "Ms. Orton will see you at 3:30, 6th Street, side entrance. Ask for Rita." Fulton and Wesley looked like any other legal building, tall, modern, and polished. But I'd learned power didn't live in flash. It lived in silence, behind frosted glass and firm handshakes. The receptionist raised her brows when I said my name. "Lily Marin." She blinked, hesitated. But no one corrected me. She nodded. Waiting rooms are built to make you feel small. But I didn't shrink. When Sylvia Orton stepped through the door, a woman in a navy suit, silver hair pinned tight, no nonsense in her tone, she didn't ask who I was. She said, "I was wondering when you'd stop being the ghost in their story." We sat in a private office, papers laid out between us like chess pieces. I presented the will, the video, the bank records, the letters. When she saw Grandpa's sealed letter, the one marked, "If they ever burn you," she only softened for a breath. "Your grandfather wasn't naive," she said. "He saw this coming, and he trusted you to finish what he couldn't." From her drawer, she produced another envelope. 2 months before his death, he came here in person, had this notarized in front of 3 witnesses. His final, formal statement named you as the sole heir of all liquid assets. It was real, typewritten, signed, witnessed by Edna Monroe, our childhood notary and Sunday school volunteer. I couldn't speak. I didn't need to. That silence wasn't weakness anymore, it was a victory. We filed the probate challenge that afternoon. "No contact," Sylvia instructed. "Let them smile for the cameras. Let them mock you online. Every lie they tell now is just another nail in their coffin." I showed her a screenshot, Mom and Emma standing in front of Grandpa's estate, smiling under a banner that read, "First in line, always have been." Sylvia didn't react, she just said, "Let them bleed slowly." The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep. Not from nerves, those had burned off weeks ago. What remained wasn't anxiety, it was focus. That morning I walked into the county courthouse wearing my truth-like armor. I didn't need to posture. I had proof. Hearing room 2B was quiet. My parents sat across the aisle, my father in a wrinkled blazer, my mother-in-law's pearls that didn't sit right, they looked through me. But their lawyer, a smug young type, looked like he'd already won. That made what happened next feel even sweeter. Judge Kindley entered, older, measured, not one for theatrics. Sylvia presented our case, calm, steady, no frills. She introduced the revised will, the affidavit, the notarized signature. And then she queued up the video. The screen flickered. Grandpa appeared, gaunt, tired, but his voice, steady. "If they're in court again, it means they're doing what I feared. If you're watching this, sweetheart, it's because I knew they'd try to erase you." His eyes looked straight through the lens into the courtroom. "They said you were selfish, cold, unworthy, but I saw the truth. You stayed silent not out of weakness, but strength. You endured. You never stopped showing up for love, even when they didn't show up for you." He smiled, sad and proud. "You were never the ghost, Lily. You were always the legacy." The screen went dark. The courtroom didn't. My mother let out a strangled gasp. Emma buried her face in her hands. Their lawyer fidgeted. But Sylvia wasn't done. She added one final exhibit, text messages from Emma to Grandpa, urging him to stick to the script or risk the family's image. That was the nail. Judge Kinley took a long breath. I've seen greed, he said slowly, and I've seen manipulation, but rarely have I seen it so deliberate, so coordinated, and so vile. He looked at me. Miss Lily Marin is hereby declared the sole legal heir to the estate of Edwin Marin. He turned to my parents. This court is placing a temporary freeze on your assets pending an investigation into elder coercion and fraud. My father stood, ready to object. Kinley didn't even look up. The court is adjourned. Outside, the sun was soft and high. Spring was folding into summer. I stood alone on the courthouse steps, papers in one hand, peace in the other, when a reporter approached. Miss Marin, do you have a statement, anything to say to your family? I paused. Then I looked into the camera and said, they said everything they needed to on the day they set fire to the only love that ever saw me. I don't need to answer. Grandpa already did. I walked away, not bitter, not broken. Just free. Let them say I disappeared. Let them spin tales about betrayal and ungrateful daughters. Because now, I know who I am. I am not their rewrite. I am the original, and I'm not leaving my name behind ever again.